Business owners are busy people. There's so much to focus on, from marketing to staffing, sales, and everything in between. And no matter how good your customer service is or how many 5-star reviews you have, failing to take the proper steps to legally protect your business can put it all at risk. Our guest today, attorney Blake Stewart of Stewart Law, is here to share valuable insights on potential pitfalls. Taking small steps now can go a long way towards safeguarding your valuable investment. Then later, we continue our series of tips on networking effectively. On past episodes, we've talked about what to do before and after an event. Today, we'll examine best practices during a networking event. Whether you consider yourself a wallflower or a seasoned connector, you'll sure to pick up a useful nugget or two that will help you build genuine connections. And of course, Jeff and I will invite today's guest to dive into the fishbowl for another oddball interview question. We have lots of trending talk ahead, so let's get to it and fire it up.
If you're an entrepreneur who wants to learn how to manage time, achieve goals, and increase profits, Trending Now Talk podcast is for you. Weekly episodes include business leaders who reveal valuable insights and lessons learned. Also, your hosts Cynthia Cintron and Jeff Guadalupe share tips and trends focused on areas that will help feed your entrepreneurial spirit and fire up your success.
Blake, first and foremost, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here today.
Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I wanted to start off by asking you, how long have you been an attorney?
So I'm in my 10th year. I've been doing this 10 years, and it's never a dull moment.
Never? Oh, we're going to get into that one. I know too many attorneys who have the same answer to that. Yeah. What brought you to that journey? Were you always planning on becoming an attorney? Oh, I have a polished answer, and I have an honest answer. Oh, give me the honest.
Yeah,
but I actually was interested in criminal justice. I have a criminal justice degree from UCF.
Okay.
They used to have a program where you could get a double minor, so I had a double minor in poli-sci and communications. And I was sort of heading down the law enforcement path. My father's a retired police chief from Palm Beach County, and it just seemed like, you know, that was my path.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I got into college, I sort of started to shift my focus a little bit to the courtroom side of things. I watched a few trials, and I sort of wanted to see what the process was after, you know, somebody gets dropped off, you know, what happens after the arrest. And at about the same time, I had a mentor that was a criminal defense attorney. He was also very good at getting me on speeding tickets. And
good man.
He took me to court with him a couple of times, and once I saw my first trial, I was hooked. So I ended up changing my focus, and here we are.
And why business law?
Well, so that was kind of a happy accident, I suppose. I was actually a criminal defense attorney in Miami Beach, which is exactly as fun as it sounds like.
Yeah, I'll bet.
The only caveat being that criminals don't pay their bills. Who knew?
That's
Okay.
the business law.
But I was doing a lot of that in Miami, and then a very good friend of mine worked at a Fortune 500 company in-house, and a position had come open. And it was one of those things where I was in the right place at the right time, and I applied, and I got a crash course in contracts from a German company. So very risk averse, lots of carve outs. So I learned contracts from the masters.
And they pay the bills.
And they pay the bills.
Pay the bills.
Love
That's correct.
that. Exactly.
What's your typical workday look like?
I don't know if there's such a thing as a typical work day.
Right.
Well, so we're not just a transactional firm. We do specialize in business law, but we litigate too. So that means that not only will we draft your contracts if you need them, we'll stand behind and defend those contracts. So depending on the day, court dockets are often cyclical. So a lot of times it's several weeks with, you know, maybe I'm just doing my transactional stuff or preparing motions for court, and then there will be 2 or 3 weeks at a time where it's just court every day. and fortunately I have staff to make sure that the lights stay on when I'm out of pocket. But otherwise, you know, a typical day, it's tough to.
Yeah. Well, it's
nail
whatever
down.
the calendar says.
Whatever
the
it
calendar
brings.
says.
Whatever it brings.
I never thought I would be the kind of guy that lives and dies by my Google Calendar, but that day has come. So
Yeah.
you know.
Well, welcome to business ownership.
Exactly. Exactly.
So speaking of
Cheers.
so speaking about business ownership, I'm really excited that you're here because recently, because of the new tax code changes, it's brought to light that it's really important for business owners to sort of figure out what their business entity has to look like. Can you tell us a little bit? It can be really confusing. LLCs, S Corp, what does that look like?
Sure. It is really confusing. So there's two different types of corporations. And then there's LLCs, which the IRS doesn't see. It's a disregarded entity.
Oh, that sounds good.
So what an LLC is I like to call it corporate light. But basically the state of Florida has done something nice for the small business owner and said, we're going to create this limited liability company for you. And ordinarily, I'll get into this later, ordinarily you will be afforded all of the same protections as a normal full corporation that you form. But with an LLC, the record keeping requirements are a lot lower. You know, you don't have to hold a quarterly meeting and bang a gavel and talk to only yourself and then make notes at the meeting. A lot of people did that before LLCs. It was, you know, you were supposed to do it. And it makes it a lot less cumbersome as a business owner because really you just have to remember to renew your LLC filing at the end of the year because if you don't, it's $150 if you do it on time. It's $600 if you forget and file it late.
Yeah.
So that is something that the state of Florida has done for business owners. Now, the IRS, they don't care. They don't see that. You're either a subchapter S or you're a subchapter C. As far as corporations go, there's other entities that they'll tax, but the difference between an S and a C is the way that it's taxed. So a C Corp is what we call double taxation. So the company is going to get taxed on its profit, and then the company's issuing you a paycheck, you're going to get taxed personally on that as well. So boom, boom, double taxed. An S Corp, that's pass-through taxation. So it's a little bit of a thinner layer, and so basically for financial purposes and tax purposes, you're considered the corporation. So at the end of the year, they'll, you know, whatever passed through to you, they'll tax on the person gets taxed, and then that's really it. Now the caveat to that is that if you're an S Corp, you can't just leave, you know, like 80 grand in your checking account so that you don't get taxed on it, because they'll take a look at that and say, well, you know, you're sort of cheating the system and not paying your taxes. And it gets tricky because as a business, you want to keep reserves.
Yeah.
You know, and depending on what it is, I mean, overhead for a lot of law firms is $100 grand a month, you know.
Right.
You get into like a 10, 15 attorney firm, that's a lot of payroll, it's a lot of liability insurance, and
in a business like a contractor that has a lot of
Exactly.
supply purchase.
Supplies, materials, subcontractors.
Yeah.
So
It could get complicated.
Okay, right.
I don't have an easy answer as to how much you can keep in reserve, but it's not too much.
Yeah. So really, it sounds like not having the correct entity could leave you open to audit or other problems. So it really is sort of, it's not one size fits all.
It's not.
So you really have to sort of speak to that can advise you as to, this is the kind of business that you have, this is the kind of entity you should have, and this is how to file the right paperwork. It's not so simple.
Oh, I do have a pro tip.
Oh, okay.
Since we do tips on this
We
show,
do tips.
right?
I
Yeah,
like
we
pro
do
tips.
tips.
Pro
Tips
tips.
are always great, yes.
When you file with the IRS as a corporation, your default is a C Corp, unless you file Form 2553, which is the subchapter S election. You got to do that within 90 days of formation. Otherwise, they'll tax you. They'll let you fix it, but there's going to be a cost associated with that.
Interest, yes, the
wow.
IRS.
See?
2553.
You'll get that letter in the mail that makes all the blood drain from your face.
2553.
Okay, that's really good. So the next thing that I have for you is, and I recently just experienced something because, you know, small business owners, they do business with their brother, sister, they have contractors, they have employees. I mean, there's so many different options to get your work done, but you know, basically that amounts to a handshake. Handshakes leave you vulnerable.
They do.
What should we know about contracts with the people that work with us?
So,
I know.
we only got
Come
a
on
few
now.
minutes here.
Okay, the short
In a short version.
So the deal with contracts is this. In a perfect world, there's no need for a contracts attorney. There's no need for a contract, right? Because if everybody just does what they say they're going to do,
Correct.
you don't have to worry about it.
Yes.
That rarely happens.
I know this because my boyfriend doesn't do what I ask him to do when I ask him to do it. So if he doesn't, and he loves me, so I imagine that people who don't love you are not going to.
Have him review your contract with Martin.
If you can't even get the people you like to do what you ask, what hope do you have in?
This is my point.
Yeah. So
Help her, please.
you know, contracts are really they can be really simple. My policy on contracts is that I write all my contracts on such a level that a third grader can understand them, and that's just one way to do things. I'm not saying it's the right way or the wrong way, but if anybody can understand the contract, it gets harder to say, well, I didn't understand what my responsibilities were under this document. So I usually try to write things up pretty easy, and if, you know, a typical contract has a few things in it, right? It's got the parties, right? So we're going to do some business together, so we're going to identify each other, and then we've got the performance. What are we going to do? I'm going to do this show, and you're going to promise to make me look good. And then, I mean, in this case, you've got a mutual promise. You've identified the parties. Other things you can add to your contract to beef it up are like time for performance, termination. How do I get out of this contract? Do I want out of this contract? A lot of contracts that I see, people just blind sign, and there's always like a hammer to beat the person that signed the contract. You know, we can terminate you at any time for any reason. I reviewed a contract today where there was no right of termination for the person who had signed the contract. So basically, the company could do anything they wanted, they could perform as poorly as they wanted, and there was still no right to termination. So
there's a lot of details then to cover.
Right.
And when it's time to do that contract between a customer, even between trades. So we see there's a lot of details.
Absolutely.
Do you have a to-do list that includes fixing things that are cracked, broken, old, or half done? Stop stressing. Call Diversified Contractor Services, the premier choice for those in need of the professional alternative to doing it yourself. Diversified Contractor Services specializes in helping seniors, small businesses, and busy professionals who don't have the time or ability for light construction, repairs, or maintenance services. Their trained, dependable, and licensed team are ready to help with tile repair, light fixtures, painting, pressure washing, landscape installation, small to mid-sized construction jobs, and more. Diversified Contractor Services offers high-quality workmanship that's honest, dependable, on time, and done right. Call today for a free estimate, 321-215-8208, 321-215-8208. Also, connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just remember our name, Diversified contractor services.
So getting into the body of contracts. Contracts are fairly simple. They can be fairly simple, they can be incredibly complex depending on what you're doing. Every business needs a different level of contract. But what's universal is that you're going to have your parties, right? So we need to know who's agreeing to this contract. We need to know what the parties are doing. Are you paying me? Right. Are you paying me and I'm doing something for you? Are we exchanging promises? That's the consideration. And then the time for performance, you know, like how long do we have to do this? Obviously, if you're going to pay me to teach a college class, it's not going to be 10 years from now. It's probably going to be within the next semester or so. There's entire statutes built into the Florida Code that benefit contracts, like the statute of frauds. So the statute of frauds prevents you from, there's such thing as an oral contract. I can say, hey, you give me $10 and I'll take your trash out for the next week.
Nice.
That's an oral contract. Probably enforceable, but if the value of the contract exceeds $100 or you're dealing with real estate, then the statute of frauds comes into play as a defense. So if I say, hey, she told me she was going to sell me her house for $1,000 and I accepted and now she's not doing it, the first defense is, well, okay, you're barred from that kind of contract by the statute of frauds. So then it becomes like this hurdle to overcome.
Wow.
Wow.
So
going on to Google, downloading language, putting it on the back of an invoice and saying sign here doesn't always work.
It doesn't always work. If you can believe that.
Oh. Now we got to redo everything.
Well, you know, most people, tell me if this is true, most people, they start their business, I'm going to start a business, right? So you do everything that you need to do from A to Z, and usually part of that means I'm going to write a contract for my clients, for my employees or whatever. You Google, find the language that looks the easiest to read, change out the name of the company that's
Open
in there
spaces, there's spaces
to your
for it.
company.
Yeah.
Then format it, stick it on the back of your contract, and go with that.
I always joke that I charge more if you bring me a contract that you copied and pasted off the internet. No, I mean, it's a valid point. You know, when you're starting a small business or you're a sole proprietor or it's just you, I think the idea of hiring an attorney to do your documents for you can be intimidating, or people think it's going to be extremely expensive. Every contracts attorney has the same joke. It's you can hire me to do this right the first time, or you can hire me and someone else to fix it, you know, when things go south. So
if they come in to see you, if an entrepreneur says, okay, I'm going to come in to see Blake, they come in, you're going to go over LLC, C Corp, you're going to go over those details. And then maybe you highlight some of the contracts. What are some of the other things you might highlight for an entrepreneur while they're there, sitting there for the first time?
Well, a lot of people don't realize the types of agreements they'll need for their business. So that's the first thing I do. I try to get a handle over what they're doing. Are they employing a lot of people? Do you have trade secrets? Do you have client lists? These are things that you're probably not going to want your employees to have access to once they separate from your company.
Oh, absolutely.
So for a situation like that, a non-disclosure agreement would be a great idea to get your employees to sign up for. That way, upon separation from the company, you know that your information is safe, or in the event that it's not, you've got a document you can stand on to try to recover your damages.
Definitely want to hear more about that non-disclosure agreement. N2 Publishing is the leader in their industry, creating custom publications that connect neighbors to neighbors and business owners to hard-to-reach customers throughout the nation for nearly 15 years. And locally in Satellite Beach with Tortoise Island Living magazine for over 10 years. N2 Publishing is passionate about turning neighborhoods into communities, and through a hyper-targeted, multi-touch point approach, their business partners reach their ideal customers in a unique and powerful way. If you are ready for your business to make the right impression with the right customers, call today 321-604-0595. That's 604-0595. Also connect with Tortoise Island Living Magazine on Instagram and Facebook. So go ahead about that non-compete.
So non-compete agreements are a hot button, right? So a lot of times when we sign up with an employer, be it big, be it small, we're subject to some kind of non-compete. From the employer side of things, it makes sense, right? We're bringing you in, we're giving you consideration, which is your profession, your job, and in return, we're giving you access to all of our business. So when you elect to leave, obviously you can do a lot of damage to an employer.
Absolutely.
So it makes sense that you're going to want something in place to protect you. But how, you know, the pendulum can swing the other way. So it's got to be fair to both parties. And a lot of times you end up in courts asking for interpretations of non-competes. Typically a non-compete will give you a period of time and then a distance during which you're not to engage in whatever profession it was you were in. Over the break, I think you told me you were in insurance.
I was an insurance broker at the time and insurance agent at the time before I became a broker. And I signed a non-compete, and it was about 25-mile radius.
Sure.
And for how many years?
And that was 2 year.
Yeah.
2 year, 25 mile.
The time period and the distance can differ depending on your profession. With the insurance industry, a lot of times what you have to look at is how many people are doing what I'm doing. And I always, you guys network too. I'm going to tune in for the networking section because I can always use networking tips. But I know that when I network, my joke is that for every attorney, there's an insurance agent and a realtor.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
We come in
Absolutely.
triplets. So when you consider that, if you were to get into a knockdown drag out in the courts about your non-compete because maybe your employer is trying to enforce this draconian non-compete against you, you know, the judge may look and say, all right, well, how many insurance agents are there in this area? How long of a look-back period are we looking at? 2 years? It seems a little bit excessive. And so the courts will have the ability to sort of interpret and trim down the agreement to what they decide is fair.
Okay.
So, like in the case of a doctor, it can be a little different. There's not that many doctors, so if you give a doctor a non-compete of 25 miles, he basically has to move out of town to practice.
Right.
So, a lot of times, those agreements get interpreted a little bit differently. So, these are factors that the courts consider.
So it's important, depending on your business, that you know what's customary and have that information, so that if you are writing on competes and non-disclosure agreements, that they'll hold up in court.
Exactly. Depending on how you copy and paste it off the internet, the whole agreement could be stricken as opposed to interpreted. So that's why it's always good to contact a legal professional early.
Well, you want to structure your business. It's sort of, if you're walking around in this false belief that you're protected in case somebody goes, you know, you may find out that you lose an employee or lose a contractor. Next thing you know, they're off, you know, with your trade secrets.
Poaching your clients.
Poaching your clients, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I think it's because we live in a society now that so many people feel like they could pull it up on Google and do it themselves, YouTube it.
Sure.
And they don't want to seek the counsel. I mean, if you don't know how to do it, seek the right counsel.
Well,
that's, you know.
And money is slim, definitely. It's a consideration.
Absolutely.
Income is a consideration when you start your business and you're thinking about if you have a brick and mortar, your signs, you know, and all of the things that go with entrepreneurship. We tend to, you know, sort of put the things that we think that, you know, we'll handle later to the back. But what you said earlier is true. You know, a pound of, what is it, a bit of cure is worth a pound of prevention. Yeah.
Wow.
That's a good one.
I was going to staple that one.
Yeah.
Ooh, thank you.
Is that copyrighted? Trademarked?
Oh, trademark. There it is.
Oh,
I'm not an IP
trademark.
guy. Not an IP guy. I can give you a referral.
That's fine.
Excellent, excellent. I guess the next thing that I want to ask you about is proper documentation for employees. Again, you may think that someone is a contractor, but the IRS sees them as an employee.
quickest way I see people getting into trouble.
Talk to us about that.
Okay, so there's a definition for a subcontractor, and obviously it's more lucrative for us to have a bunch of 1099 subcontractors than it is employees, because with an employee, you're starting to get into workman's comp. Do I have to provide
Disability.
medical insurance? I have to pay payroll tax. With a 1099, it's very simple, very basic. I pay you for this job, and by the way, your taxes, they're up to you. We all love that.
Yeah.
Everybody I've ever seen cheats about 1099s. And the IRS has gotten wise to it in the last few years. It's one of the quickest ways to get audited.
Sure have.
And what you have to look at is, can they work somewhere else? What makes a true 1099 is, yes, I work for you, but I also work for 3 other people doing this same thing. Who's providing the equipment and the tools? Am I driving around in a truck with your name on it that you own? Because if I am, I'm probably not a 1099. So
Another one as well that I learned recently this year, because I contract as well, is if you go in, if the person that you're doing work for tells you when to come in, when to leave, and how many, how to set up your schedule.
it's called directing work.
Okay. Yeah, if it walks like a dog and talks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
Right. So they can't direct your work.
So I have to tell them I can put in this many hours and I decide when I come and go.
Correct.
Yeah. So, and that's a rough one. A lot of employees. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Now, it's really hard to be a true 1099.
It's hard for employers to actually, or business owners,
Yeah.
because the 1099, you have no control over them. They come, they go, they take lunch, they do whatever they want to do as long as they deliver the work
Right.
and deliver what's stated on the contract
Exactly.
that you should have
Going
between.
back to that contract.
And what if they're not available? Right. So we've used per diem employees as we were building our practice up, and what I learned is that you have to have a rotation of people that perform the same function, because if I come to you on Tuesday and say, hey, I would like these documents drafted, and they say, oh, I'm so sorry, I have a big project, it's due tomorrow, I can't accommodate you. So now either I have to get it done myself or I have to find someone else to do it. That's a true 1099.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
The contract will determine that.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
When it comes down to the 1099s, do you find that all the changes this year had an effect on that too?
I find that people are going out of their way to try to create those distinctions now. I don't want to pick on any particular field,
He's picking on me.
but if I were to give an example, I find that in the lawn care landscape industry, they are typically among the worst offenders for 1099 versus W-2 employees, because if you look at the actual definition of a 1099, that's why I made the truck comment. A lot of times they're using company equipment, they're using company trucks, they're there 9 to 5, and the only thing that makes them a 1099 is that they have an LLC and they're paid that way. And so
Right.
that's really what the IRS is looking for. If you're bringing in a substantial amount of revenue and you don't have any employees, but you have 15 1099s,
Yeah.
and you own a bunch of company property,
Yeah.
it's like a big flag to
And
the
a bunch of
IRS.
company trucks,
Mm-hmm.
and you're the only driver?
Exactly.
Oh.
Being in the,
I
being
bet
in
you're
the construction
really
business, I
busy
see it all
these
the
days.
time.
Well, people 2 years ago, people were getting slammed. I think they're starting to figure it out.
Right,
I've been seeing less of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I-
being in the field, you see it a lot. We usually call them gypsies, because a lot of times they're here and then they're gone,
Mm-hmm.
and you see it out in the field, because just like you said, you're wondering who's driving that truck,
That's true.
because it'll say Jim Smith, and you're not Jim Smith.
No.
Yikes. So let me ask you this. So let's say that you do get one of those letters from the IRS. Jim Smith just got caught.
Not
Sorry.
driving his truck.
Not driving
Sorry,
his truck.
Jim. Sorry, Jim. what should you do? I got a letter that I'm being sued or from the IRS, and after the blood has finished draining from my face, what do I do?
So for an audit, this is my real recommendation. If you get that letter that says you're going to be audited, your business is going to be audited, call a CPA first.
Right.
Call a CPA immediately.
Right.
The CPA will take a look at your business, tell you what's going on. If there's modifications you can make, if there's documentation that you can come up with, he'll know, get yourself a business attorney, get these documents, and then I work with CPAs all the time.
Okay.
Because I'm not a math person.
Okay.
But a CPA and a business attorney are a 1-2 punch for an audit.
Yeah.
You need them both, and if you get it, most of the time, on a first offense, the IRS isn't out for blood. They're just there to
slap you on the
right.
It's like they're watching.
Right. So if you have a team that's experienced with IRS audits, they'll tell you what to say and what to do.
Exactly. Yeah, I read somewhere that a good rule of thumb when you're starting a business is get a good CPA, get a good attorney, and just sort of have those conversations and have them, in your Rolodex.
Corner. Yeah.
The last plug I'm going to give my profession is that with most small businesses, one of the first things that your customers see is a document. So that contract, that agreement you put in front of somebody to get their business, it says a lot about you. So why not do it right the first time?
Yeah. And it doesn't, I think most business owners would be afraid, I'm going to make the appointment, come in, the minute I walk over the threshold, it's $500, and then he's going to uncover all of these things that I have to do. It really isn't that way anymore.
No, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
I promise.
It's not that
I
bad.
promise.
It doesn't hurt that much.
No, I think the thing is they don't take the time to find out what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, because marketing for attorneys nowadays, it's on the TV and you always see the big numbers, and they forget it's the little things that'll, have the largest effect on your business. Yeah. And those are the things. Preparing probably costs less than defending.
It's true.
Exactly.
So, no, go ahead. No, I just wanted to ask, in dealing with all the things that you've shared, what was one of the toughest problems or decisions you had to handle?
Oh, I wasn't prepared for the job interview question.
Come on now.
Man, I've had some...
Well, give us a horror story. I love horror stories.
Yeah.
Tell us a story about when somebody was in court crying.
Oh, that's every week. No, how about... well... I'm afraid, because I have a few that are really good, but if you were to Google them, I think you could figure out who it is.
Oh,
so
no.
I have to be careful.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, I've been very fortunate in my career. I just happen to be in the right place at the right time a few times, and you network.
Exactly.
So note to self, the next time the plate comes on, we'll make sure that the's some whiskey in that glass.
To loosen them
up.
up.
The last case, I tell you what, the last case I did not take, in Miami Beach, before I became a business attorney, we had what we called a graduation. And I had defended somebody on a drug possession charge. They graduated to trafficking, and then I got the call, you have received a call from an inmate at the Johnny Polk Correctional Facility. Would you like to accept the charges?
Really?
And the story was, I was partying with my ex-wife and my new girlfriend, and when I woke up, my ex-wife was dead. So he offered to pay me with a brick of cocaine in a parked car.
Stop it.
I did not, I turned that one down.
I'm going to tell you, the life of an attorney. That's like I might say, when we asked earlier, what's your typical work day? I can't imagine the things you deal with each and every day.
Oh, 3 months ago, I got a gun pulled on me at a mine.
At a mine?
At a mine, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's mines around here, yeah. Line of duty. So you just never know, what you're going to run into.
I bet. Well, one thing I got to tell you, thank you for sharing all you have.
County.
Yeah, because to know that this happens in this town.
I know, right? Well, we're really grateful to to have you come and share your stories. And before we invite our listeners to look for the week that we promote the show,
Right.
we always have we invite our listeners to send questions or if they want to connect with our guests. So I have a feeling we might have a lot of traffic on our page
Yeah,
that day.
we're going to have traffic.
that week.
Well, I had a blast. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Well, great. Well,
same
thank
here.
you so much.
But now it's a special time.
Oh, it's a very special time. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm always
I
ready.
love putting the attorney in that chair.
Are you ready?
Yes. So now it's time for the fishbowl. And the fishbowl is actually a time where we look at our guests and we pose questions that they may have experienced during an interview process, and it gives us an opportunity to laugh at them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
At the question, not the
So-
person.
No, never at the person.
Oh, of course.
No, never. So Blake,
Please feel
if
free.
you would feel free to dip into the fishbowl
Not drink the fish
and
bowl.
Not
select
drink the
one
Not
fish
drink
bowl.
fish bowl.
and hand it over. Let's
All right,
see.
so I hand this to you.
Yes,
All
let's
right.
see what we have.
Don't put it
can't
against your
wait.
forehead.
I'm
or
very
nothing.
excited. What's cool is they don't know if I'm actually reading what's on this
I
paper.
know,
They're
right?
making something up, right? All right, so this is a question that was asked during an interview for an associate analyst position at Gallup.
Okay.
What do you think about when you are alone in your car?
Oh, dang.
That's so
I have kind of a sordid history with being by myself in my car.
Would the answer change if country music is playing?
Is he pulling me over? That's usually what I'm thinking. Is he pulling me over?
At that moment, that's the thought of the day.
I love it. So Jeff, what do you think about when you're in your car? I love my seat. This is great. What do you think about when you're alone in your car?
Wow.
Ah!
When I'm alone in my car, there's too many thoughts to process. No, I'm not going there.
You're not?
No, I'm not going there.
Gosh.
How about posing it to yourself? What do you think?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so
You look like a singer to me.
I used to be. I used to be a singer.
Don't sing.
Now I am an audiobook listener.
Okay.
So it varies between what is my dog doing and when is my next deadline? Is Jeff gonna be on time? No, I'm kidding.
Oh! You better be looking in that rearview mirror, girl. Yeah, see, that opens up
What
a
are we
whole
gonna
can of
ask
worms.
our guest?
But I did notice he looked to the left when he thought about that question.
To see his
But
wife.
yeah,
His
yeah.
wife
He
is in
looked at
stu-
his
Blake's wife is
He
in
looked at his wife
studio.
before
Yeah,
answering that
he's like,
question.
"Ugh."
But I caught that, but I didn't want to bring it out loud. Anyway, we will.
Could you imagine if you get that question and you're in an interview and they ask you, what do you think about when you're alone in your car, huh?
I think
And
of
they give you
naked
that
animals.
look. You know, I kind of wonder. You know, the last job I held a long time ago, God knows, I probably would have talked about like, you know, I think about food.
I would have failed.
I don't know.
I would have failed. That's all I got to say. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for answering that question
Thanks for playing
Thanks
along.
for having me.
and dealing with Cynthia.
You know, and this is why we're entrepreneurs, so we
Yeah.
don't have to interview. We don't have to answer these
Exactly,
questions.
exactly.
Until you come and sit in the chair.
Exactly.
Exactly. So Blake, thank you so much for coming today and playing with us and giving us some really important information for our listeners to think about. I mean, there's a lot of considerations.
Absolutely.
The business
Yeah,
landscape.
was that a contract joke?
Oh! Now we're going to end with that one.
Running a business is difficult. Throw in some legal complications, and business owners can quickly feel like they're drowning. When working with Stewart Law, you can expect a team who listens to your ideas and concerns and works hard to find and create the most strategically sound solutions for your business's legal needs. Focusing on business, contracts, construction, and real estate law, Stewart Law is your resource for any business's legal representation.
From forming your brand new company, to reviewing and drafting complex documents, to being your zealous advocate in complex civil litigation, Stewart Law employs its uniquely specialized experience to provide clients with legal services and solutions that liberate them to better pursue their goals. Stewart Law, you do what you do best, let us deal with the fine print. To schedule an appointment today, call 321-541-6845. That's 321-541-6845. Or visit us at stewartlawcs.com. stewartlawcs.com.
Now we come into the segment of the tip of the day. We had a great time with Blake, and it reminds us of the information that we went over in the past. We talked about networking. We had a segment prior talking about what to do before you get to the networking event. Then we went over some real good information about follow-up. Today, though, we want to be able to talk about what you do at the networking event. With all the preparation that you did when it came down to getting your questions together, that was probably one of the most important parts of preparing for a networking event. Many times, Cynthia and I will go into a networking event having a good time, getting distracted because you have music going on, you have food, you have people trying to get your attention, but you have to remember one very important thing. You're there to work. You're there to network. With that said, you have your goal in place. You want to meet, let's say, 3 key people, and once you start that conversation, you need to have those questions in place. But how do you start that conversation? The first thing is, many of us start going around and you start reading the name tags. You know, you're reading the name tags and trying to qualify individuals on who are going to be your best individuals to network with. Don't always do that, because even if somebody's in a financial or somebody's in insurance or somebody's into real estate, an attorney, you can't pre-qualify that, because it's not always about you doing business with them. It's about who they know that you can do business with. So that's one of the points. So once you receive the, let's say you get to a point where you meet somebody and you start some small talk, get into your questions. The first question you might want to ask, of course, is what is it that you do? And when I say that, even though it says attorney at law, ask them specific. Ask them what type of attorney. You heard us ask Blake some of the details of what their work day was like. That's going to give you a great amount of information of what they do each and every day. But remember, I also said there's other questions that you can ask, probing questions, to be able to see if this individual is going to be able to help you network and grow your circle of influence. How about how much client contact do you have? Here you're talking to an attorney. You want to find out how much relationship he builds with him and every client. Or how about asking the question, how much contact and what kinds of interactions do you have with individuals outside your office? See, these probing questions are going to give you the information needed to better have a relationship with this individual. When you ask these questions, please do me a favor. Take your time and listen. Listen to their answer. Because what's happening now is, as I'm facing you as I'm speaking to you right now, I could get distracted by somebody walking into the door on the left-hand side. I need to keep my focus and my eye contact with you, because this way I have true interest in what you're sharing with me. When you're building those relationships, it's so important that you just don't have it cookie cutter, because you want to be able to have some emotion into what you're sharing. As you're conversing, they're also going to be asking about your business. This is where you need to take advantage of the prep time that you took on that 60-second blurb that you worked so hard at home trying to get together about your business. You have 60 seconds to share in a nutshell exactly what you do and what you're hoping to achieve by being here at the networking group. After sharing that, then you can go back into asking them, and it just goes back and forth. The other most important 2 items that I want to share with you is this: finding out how to follow up with them. Now that you've had a pleasant conversation, do you find out, do you follow up with them on phone, on email, social media? These are all avenues to follow up. Ask them what they're most comfortable with, because you want to get this question out of the way. Why? At a networking group, you are limited on time. So, yes, you're having a great time with this individual. Now is the hardest part. You have to end the conversation because you're having a great time, but you have to meet 2 other people that is on your goal, on that goal list that you have in place. So now you find out how to follow up, and how do you segue into that? Be upfront, saying, listen, I had a wonderful time. I promise you, look forward to our one-on-ones, and I'm going to be able to follow up with you. Is Tuesday okay? About 2 p.m. I'll give you a call, or I'll shoot you a quick email so that we can have a one-on-one. And I'm going to let you go because I'm sure there's plenty of people that you'll want to meet here at the networking group, and I'm going to be doing the same. Thank you so much for your time. And then you proceed to go to that next person. Do not stop until you reach that 3-person goal. After that, then you can take your time, enjoy, have a drink, something to eat, listen to the music, and have a great time. But until then, remember that you're at work, and it's so important that you're able to do this fluently. Because again, having those questions prepped, getting the information needed to follow up, being able to segue to get to your next person, all that's going to be able to help you reach your goal of increasing your circle of influence. So I thought I'd share that with you today. I hope you were able to receive some good positive information from that. And at this time, Cynthia, what is it? What is it that you see out there in the networking groups?
Oh, networking. You know, I've got a little bit of a love-hate relationship with networking.
I know, we've talked about that.
I know, we have. It's really funny because, I mean, I've gotten better over the years, but really I find that sometimes I experience a little bit of social anxiety before I go in, you know, just walking into the room and really not knowing. And I've spoken with a lot of my friends, and I find that they have the same thing as well. What's worked for me is to I took your advice, and I've taken it in the past, to have a really clear understanding of what it is that I want to accomplish, and to have a goal. How many people am I going to talk to?
Absolutely.
And I find that once you get in there and you start talking to people, if you're prepared, if you know your 30-second or 60-second elevator speech, if you know what your business is and you can rattle that off, practice it. If you have a goal of how many people you're going to speak to, 3, 5, whatever the case is, that it helps a lot. And the other thing that really helped is to take the pressure off was to put myself in the mindset that I'm there to be of service, as opposed to I have to get all these cards, I have to get all this business. I find that in general, when we sort of put ourselves in a position, and I think I may have learned this from you years ago when I met you doing networking.
Having fun.
I'm sure having fun. I think maybe you were talking about this, and it was, you know, really ask them, what can I do for you?
Absolutely.
How can I serve you?
There it is.
You know, and because people, love to talk about themselves, and it creates an instant connection, right? When you say that to someone and they're just really, you want to know what you can do for me, and really genuinely mean that.
Also, the questions that you ask. Sometimes what happens is when we're networking, everybody's like, oh, let me tell you what I do, let me tell you what I sell, let me tell you my services, and it's a commercial.
Yeah.
That is not networking.
No.
Networking is getting to know the person.
That's business speed dating.
Yeah, speed dating.
Yeah.
It is. We've seen that, and I can't. No, that's not for me.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, it is. For me, networking is getting to know the person in front of you. I don't even know if I want to do business with you yet.
Yeah.
I don't know your personality type.
Yeah.
Some of the questions that you ask, like if I was to ask you, let me tell you something. Let me ask you something while I'm here. What would be a book that you would refer to me?
A professional
to
book?
read? Yes.
Oh gosh, there's so many. The Tipping Point.
Tipping Point.
Yeah,
See?
that was a good book.
That right there, just because you were able to give me an answer, lets me know that you believe in personal development. You see, sometimes we don't realize by asking certain questions, do you have children? What your goals are, what your passions are. And once you start asking the right questions, and now that smile comes up, and they start to, or they start talking about their kids or their dogs, and then you have that as a common factor between you, because now we get it to talking to dogs, forget it. So now at the end, when you ask the question, listen, who could you refer me to? And they say, oh, I got a couple of people. Now I look at you and say, would you mind me letting them know you referred me? That's after a wonderful, warm conversation that you had at a networking event. That's when you know you've achieved your goal. You've built that relationship.
And you know, don't you, when you're absolutely right. When you walk away from a conversation, if it feels good, you leave there with a smile, you know that you've genuinely connected. And chances are the person on the other side also feels the same way. And that's really important. It's not only what's going on at the networking event, but it's the lasting effect or the lasting impression that you've left on that person. Not too long ago, I filled in for someone at a BNI business networking event. And I met, and I just thought, you know, it's early in the morning, I'm going to phone this in. But it's really hard for me to just phone something in. I show up, and I started chatting and connecting. All the pressure was off. I'm not part of this group. I'm just kind of like showing up to fill in. I'm going to read her script and keep it moving. Maybe I'll meet somebody, pick up a card, drop a card, keep it moving. I was so relaxed and so comfortable that I really felt the conversations that I had were really genuine. I left, and I've actually had 2 people that I'm doing business with that I referred business to them, and it's just been an incredibly long-lasting connection. So that's really important,
and going back to what you said, how can I help you? Because it automatically throws people off guard. They're ready to hear a pitch from you as soon as you walk up to them, and suddenly they have somebody saying, how could I help you? That was something that we shared a long time ago. It not only touches them, it gets them to respond differently. Even the questions that you ask, one of the times that I asked was, what career mistake has given you the biggest lesson? What career mistake in your career has given you the biggest lesson?
Totally answer that question.
But see, it gets people thinking. It's just like when we have our guests here, sometimes we'll ask a question and they're like, wow, where did you go with that one? You do that at a networking group, they will remember you. And that's what you want. They want to remember a positive time, that you are truly interested in the successes or even the failures, so that we have a common denominator between us. We all fail, you know, we just learn from it.
And there's a good chance, because generally speaking, whatever market you are in, those people, they know people you know, or you'll see them at future networking events.
Absolutely.
And you'll find that you just start building that rapport. And when you see them the next time, it's so much easier then to go into that event and you have a friendly face or two there. Along those lines, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
It's still a challenge. What is your tip for when you've broken away and you've set up your one-on-one, you've made a great connection with this person, you're ready to move on to the next, there's a group over there, there's 3 or 4 people talking, they're in their huddle, but I really would like to say hello to this person. What do you do? Or you're standing there and everybody's huddled up, and you're kind of standing there looking for your glass, kind of looking around going, okay, where do I go next?
Okay, well, for me, here's a little bit of a difference, and I've worked with people who have that fear. Is you have to get rid of the fear. So you see a group of people, you walk right up to the group, you say, excuse me, how you doing? My name is Jeff, and I wanted to make sure I had an opportunity to talk to you. When you guys are done, I was wondering if you could break for 2 minutes so that I can talk to you.
Nice.
Some people are like, oh my God, yeah. You're there to work. You're there to work. And now that person received how important it is for you to talk to them, because they realize it's not normal for somebody to walk into a circle and say, hey, can I talk to you? And most of the time, they will be, oh, give me 2 seconds. How you doing? My name is. And they'll start talking to you. Go there and just do.
Step outside of your comfort zone.
Oh, Cynthia. And that's what it is. Our
You have to
comfort
get
zone.
comfortable with being uncomfortable
You
when you're an
do,
entrepreneur.
and
Constantly.
Yes, and the problem is we put ourselves in that box. We got to get out the box.
Yeah. You know, when I started networking, when it took on a whole new meaning for me, was when I realized that face-to-face, that networking opportunity turns it into a warm lead as opposed to cold calling.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yes.
If it's a choice between going to a networking event and meeting a couple of people, having, you know, a glass of wine and chatting, or waking up on a Monday morning knowing that I need to fill up an appointment schedule and there's nothing there, all of a sudden I get real comfortable in that.
I'll take networking
I'll
all
tell
day
you
long.
what, I'm
And
talking to
see,
everybody.
I don't even need to wait to that point. I'll take networking all day long.
Yeah.
Warm relationships versus picking up that phone.
Right.
I'm just saying. But thank you for asking those questions.
Oh, thanks. That was a really, really great, Jeff. Thank you so much for those tips. So, and now I guess we've come to the end of our show.
We're done.
No.
Excellent
I
show.
want to do it again.
I know we will.
We will next week.
That's it. Next
right?
week. Next week's show.
Awesome. Well, before we go, I'd like to say thank you to Eastern Florida State College
They
for
do a
hosting
wonderful job.
us, and the digital media and television program for everything that you see here, for working the cameras and the lights and keeping us on time.
They do
you
a
guys
fantastic
are amazing.
job.
Don't forget to download, search us, like us, and we'll see you next time on Trending Now Talk.
See you then.
Thanks for listening to Trending Now Talk. Join the conversation today. Download and subscribe for free on iTunes, Buzzsprout, and Spotify. Trending Now Talk is recorded at the Eastern Florida State College Studios in Cocoa, Florida.